Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers Cleats podcast. It is Thursday, May 9th. That is Chuck Miketinac. I'm Matt Roy. This is our new background that Luis put together for us, so that's lovely. Chuck, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Matthew. How are you?
I am fantastic. The world is not crumbling around us.
You know what? I walked in today. I saw a maroon shirt. I thought, oh, look at you representing Texas State. It's like, oh no, Arizona State. How could I have been mistaken?
It says Bobcats. It says Bobcats.
Nice one.
We have a really good recruiting class coming in football and basketball. So it's a good time to be a Sun Devil until we don't make the tournament.
Good time to be a Bobcat too, and GJ we trust.
GJ Kinney is doing a fantastic job up there. How long we're getting off the rails like 30 seconds in. How long do you think GJ Kinney is actually going to be at Texas State?
I don't know. I hope a while because, I just do. So, I mean, again, I can't predict the future, but I would imagine if he keeps winning like he does, let the rumors begin.
Love it. All right. Well, like I said, it's Thursday, May 9th. We have a lot going on. The Wemby is now officially the Rookie of the Year. We'll talk a little bit about what he said on the NBA on TNT broadcast, which actually might be going away in and of itself. But we won't get into that right now. It's too many tentacles for me. Also saw an interesting article from KMBC in Kansas City that maybe the Chiefs are leaving Kansas City and maybe they're coming to Texas. Maybe even more interesting, they're coming to San Antonio. So we got that cooking. Will Jerry Jones even allow that to happen? That'll be another topic we discuss today. Plus, former Mayor Henry Cisneros is chiming in because he's the one that brought one of the ones that brought the Alamo Dome to San Antonio in 1993 in hopes of bringing an NFL team. And now 31 years later, there's the Brahmas and UTSA, but nothing else. So we'll get into all that. But first, as always, we start with number 99. And this one is a very easy one for me, at least, Chuck. I mean, Wayne Gretzky, yeah. How do you think of anyone else? There's one and only one, 99. Yeah, I mean, you look at every time I want to be fascinated, I just look up Wayne Gretzky's stats, and it's almost like looking up Wilt Chamberlain's stats. It's just he has the entire record book. He's the one that made hockey cool. Yeah, I mean, he's in places that didn't have hockey. He's the great one, and he's not Mr. Hockey because that's but he should be. He should be Mr. Hockey. He should have all the nicknames. He is the hockey. Yeah, in my lifetime for sure. And I don't remember what year it was. Bob, maybe give me some help on this. The Edmonton Oilers, at their height of winning Stanley Cups, played an exhibition game, a preseason game against the Dallas Stars in the Alamo Dome way back in the day. And yeah, we got to interview Wayne Gretzky. It was very, very cool. No, it didn't come to mind.
Hockey guy at all.
Okay.
But we do have someone in the chat from Scotland, Rob McKinn, with a name like McKinn.
No.
So I'm 33% Scottish, so
international. The show is international.
Thank you for watching all the way in Scotland. That's awesome. We actually, when we first started, we had a lot of our viewership was French because of Wemby. We were always talking about Victor. So we actually had a lot of viewers, a lot of listeners from France and from Europe. So I'm glad that everyone's tuning in, and hopefully we don't bore you to death. I think we're doing a decent job so far. But I wanted to look at some of the Wayne Gretzky stats because they're just so absurd that I wanted to kind of bring a couple of them to light. So 5 most absurd Gretzky stats that I could find. He has the most Art Ross trophies, which is the most points scored in an NHL season with 10. The next most is 6 by Gordie Howe. Most career points with 2,857. That's 970 more than Mark Messier. If you took away every goal that he ever scored, he would still have the most points over Mark Messier.
Wow, no kidding.
Because he had because he has the most assists with 1,963, which is more than Mark Messier has total points. So it's just insane the amount of records he has. He also had 3 consecutive seasons of 200 points or more. I think it was 208, 210, and 215. For reference, the last 5 Art Ross trophy winners all averaged 110 points. So almost doubled with the last 5 have won. And last but not least, he scored 50 goals in 39 games in one stretch of his career. Which is just absurd. It's just like you can just go on forever. It's almost like Wilt, who we'll talk about more on episode 100, I'm sure, because of his 100-point game. It's just absolutely absurd the amount of records he has.
Yeah, and I mean that was back in the day too, before they changed the offside rules too. So it was like almost like soccer in that regard.
So there's a
the way
lot
they managed offsides.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of other things that happened in 99. The Denver Broncos beat the Falcons 34-19. That was January 31st, 1999. MVP was John Elway. What was the story you were trying to tell Monday about the Falcons player getting arrested?
Oh, you don't want me to regurgitate something I had a hard time remembering. I just remember they had a player arrested on a solicitation charge. I think it was Eugene Robinson, but I don't remember.
All right, well.
And then, so, I don't want to slander Eugene Robinson, but there was a player
Sorry,
that was
Eugene.
arrested before the Super Bowl, and it was, pretty salacious a couple days before the Super Bowl that was the headline grabber.
All right. Well, that was John Elway's last game as well. I'll always remember it fondly. After that, I actually met John Elway for the first and only time that summer at a golf tournament in Palm Desert, California. That's where I'm from. And he signed my jersey and signed my hat and all that stuff. I've told that story here before. That's also the reason I hate him at Smith, because he told me and my dad to F off that day when he was having a bad round.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it was
maybe you had it coming.
The old Bob Hope Chrysler Classic. Yeah, I mean, my 4-year-old self, like, cue.
Oh, wow.
I'm just
He
kidding.
did that to you when you were 4?
Yeah. It was
Wow. I wouldn't forget that either.
This was
because
the summer of 1999, so I was 3.
Wow.
Yeah, it was insane. And my dad will always tell me that's the reason. That's the day I started hating Emmitt Smith. The day I started loving the Broncos was because we saw John Elway and Emmitt Smith the same day. John Elway signed all of our stuff. We went to the car, changed, brought everything else out. We were decked out in Cowboys stuff. Wanted Emmitt to sign our stuff, and he told us to F off.
Wow.
I was 3 in 99. Yeah. Luis, you're really dating yourself.
And I have warts older than both of you guys combined.
Luis said, because he doesn't have a mic, he said that was his second year here at the station. So, and Chuck was here for almost 4 years at that point.
I'd already been here for
a while.
4 years. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't want to linger on old wounds.
Yeah, we're seasoned, man.
Anyway,
it's all right. Wisdom comes with that.
99 was also the year that the strike-shortened NBA season, the year that the Spurs beat the Knicks in the NBA championship with the Twin Towers, David Robinson and Tim Duncan. 99, the beginning of the dynasty.
Yes, remember it well. I won't bore anybody with my story of that. All you have to do is go to YouTube. I did kind of a retrospective that I think is like 8 or 9 minutes long. That was such a fun year to me. I'll go to my grave. That was, of the championships, that was the best one.
Chuck, we are here for your boring stories. I'm just kidding.
I don't want to.
Give me 2 minutes on that championship and why that one is the best one.
Well, one, I was there.
I mean, that makes
in
it
the
better.
Garden when they closed it down. I got a huge chunk of one of the nets because the league was chopping down the nets, and I don't know. I've never heard of anybody getting, a piece of the net from an NBA rim. I mean, that was a college thing or a high school thing. And those guys left huge chunks of strands of the net up on the rim. And I was like, hey, are you guys going to do anything with the rest of that net? And they're like, no. I said, well, can I have them? They said, sure. So I got up on the ladder, huge swatches of net.
Really?
And I went and gave all my favorite Spurs a piece of the net.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was,
they don't really allow that anymore. But
no, they would, no, everything is, no, they would throw you out and that would be the end of it. But, there were other moments too. We during the height of the first road finals, because we weren't able to do it in the Western Conference Finals, Malik Rose promised us that we could come up to his room and watch him play video games against whoever. And, that was back in the day where things were on laptops and people played video games with like a little port in the middle. And because we couldn't do it in Portland, I asked Malik if we could do it during the finals. He goes, oh yeah, no problem. Well, we got busy with final stuff. So our camera guy, Raul Cortez at the time, we sent him over there, and 3 hours later he came back and he goes, you're never going to believe who was playing with Malik. Like, we thought it would be a couple of ball boys and, maybe an assistant coach or somebody, but it was Malik, Sean, David, and Tim. It was the mother lode of sound. These guys clowned on each other, and we milked that story for probably a good 10 days where we were just running like minute and a half vignettes of it. Oh, it was gold.
That's
TV
awesome.
gold.
That's awesome.
I just put the link in the
Did you?
comments.
You found it?
Yeah.
Very
All
nice.
right. Well, if anyone wants to see that 8-9 minute piece that Chuck did from the '99 finals, Bob is the goat, and put that in the
Yes.
chat. And when we
Thank you.
when we put this up
There's some snippets of that video game thing in there,
awesome.
and that was just a fun year, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that I think I had 6 days off that entire NBA season because there were games that they would play back to back to back. They were trying to jam as many games as possible into a condensed schedule because of
It was only
lockout.
54 games, right? 51 games,
50 something.
like
I don't remember what it was. And the Spurs got up to a horrible start that
6 and
year.
8, right?
You know, there was all kinds of nonsense going on early about what this team was. And then when they flipped it, and they were basically unbeatable after about the first 10 or 11 ball games.
Yeah, I mean, they swept the middle 2 series and then only lost 2 to the Knicks. Game 6, right? 2 to the Knicks, something like that.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes,
we got a lot to get to. There's rumors that the Chiefs are leaving Kansas City. As many of you may know, the Chiefs, the Jackson County tax referendum was voted down last month, which would have redone Arrowhead Stadium and a lot of their field, a lot of the boxes. It was a multi-million-dollar thing. And that also would have put the Royals downtown. It was a whole joint venture that voters not unanimously, but unequivocally voted no on. And so now there's like, okay, Clark Hunt, the owner of the Chiefs, wants a new facility instead of just renovating the old one. And now they're like, okay, do we move to Kansas, or do we move to somewhere else on the Missouri side of Kansas City, or do we move out of Kansas City completely? So that brings us to where we are now, where Jackson County legislator Manny Abarca says one reason he's been so aggressive in trying to reach new deals with both the Chiefs and the Royals is the concern about Texas. As many of us know, the Kansas City Chiefs used to be the Dallas Texans back way in the day, before any of us really. And then the murmurings, and then this is also all on KMBC 9 in Kansas City, by the way. They have that story up on their website. You can read that there. Then Abarca goes on to say there's murmurings about it, but the fact that there's even murmurings means that there's something going on. Means that, like, where there's smoke, there's fire. Henry Cisneros, the former mayor of San Antonio back in the 90s, then said this to KMBC. He said, quote, "I think Kansas City ought to do what they can to save the Chiefs, and the Chiefs ought to remember the great success they've had with Kansas City and how loyal these fans have been. That should be a marriage that lasts in perpetuity." So a lot of different factors going on. Things to question the general topic of, can San Antonio handle an NFL in San Antonio in general?
Well, we've talked about this. I think every 18 months something comes up where we have to kind of retell the story again. Could San Antonio support an NFL team? From a fan standpoint, 100%. But there's not enough money here to augment an NFL football team. So now, if you combine Austin, their resources, their fan base, with San Antonio's resources and fan base, 100% they could. I mean, and the market, I think, in some sort of duality somebody's going to come knocking at some point, but you don't hear anybody talking about building a stadium or chasing some of these teams. You can pretty much guarantee that if Kansas City doesn't figure out a way to subsidize the Chiefs and or the Royals, somebody probably else will. Maybe not so much the Royals as the Chiefs, because I think baseball's in a really tough spot right now. It seems like there are fewer towns willing to subsidize Major League Baseball, but almost all would subsidize NFL football. But having a team potentially available guarantees nothing. I mean, what would preclude the Chiefs from just moving down the freeway and going to St. Louis? That was a hell of a sports town.
Yep.
It is a hell of a sports town. They had a decent arena. I mean, a decent stadium. I mean, but again, it comes down to a lot of different variables. You know, is anybody here have the appetite? Where would you put a stadium like that? But you would have to combine forces, because these owners are not going to take a step back. If the Chiefs are going to leave a mid-sized market like Kansas City, you can almost guarantee that market from now on is going to be a bigger market that they go to, right? I mean, there's been talk for a decade of putting a team permanently in London. You put a team in London, guess what happens to the value of those other franchises that are in the NFL? They're elevated. So, of course, every owner in the league is going to go, yes, let's do it, because now my $3 billion property is now going to be worth 4+.
I think
if you just by having a team in Europe.
So why is it that you said this comes up every 18 months or so? And it basically, they built the Alamo Dome in 1993 with the hope of attracting a football team. And then when Hurricane Katrina hit, and the Saints ended up playing some of their games in the Alamo Dome, practicing in San Antonio, they almost moved to San Antonio permanently, and that was like the closest that the city has really ever had to or been to having an NFL team. Why is it that San Antonio seems like the city where we're always questioning, are they or when are they going to get an NFL team?
So even back then, and I don't even remember how many years ago, because it seems like a lifetime ago, the Alamo Dome was antiquated per NFL specs.
Yeah.
There weren't enough suites. Standpoint that almost as soon as the Alamo Dome was built, it was all of a sudden not up to NFL specs. I think we had, and still do, maybe, and I'm spitballing this, so don't hold this to me completely, 60 some odd suites in the dome, and the NFL wanted like double that. So could you have, put in some concrete barriers and made 120 suites? Sure, but could you have sold 120 suites there at the time? And now I think the suite thing is, these stadiums have way more than that. So, it's nuanced. I can see where if you're a Chiefs fan in Kansas City, I would be a little nervous, because you may not want to, as a taxpayer, and I get it. I'm at that point in my life too, where you don't want to subsidize your pro teams, but rest assured, if you don't, somebody else will.
Yeah, it's the NFL right now is a printing press. They are a mint. They are just printing money for these owners and really for the players too. There's 32 golden tickets right now. When they expand, which the NFL will do in the next 10 years or so, they will probably get 2 more teams, maybe even 4 more teams if they move them across the pond, and whatever the case may be. I don't see why San Antonio wouldn't try to get one, but there's a huge difference to me in getting the Chiefs, who have won 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls, 4 all time, have this historic, fervent fan base, and all of the success. There's a difference between moving that team to San Antonio and then building a startup. There's a huge, huge difference, especially when it comes to fan base, when it comes to branding, when it comes to all of these things. And so if I was Clark Hunt, I would want to move my team, and I was to move my team. I don't see why it wouldn't be San Antonio or Dallas or some other team, some other place in Texas where you already have those roots and you already have that branding. You already have this fervent fan base here in San Antonio that's looking for the next team to love, and that team's not going to leave like the XFL teams have passed or the AFL teams have passed or any of that stuff. But does it make sense is a whole nother question.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's super nuanced, right? Because at the end of the season, I can't remember the media outlet that did a survey of just about, 200 football players, and the Chiefs scored low on just about every conceivable thing you could be rated on that has nothing to do with football, right? Well, I mean, it does on the support staff and all that.
They don't have air conditioning in there.
Right. Locker rooms, facilities, you name it. So the NFL probably realizes you're only going to be as weak or strong, as your weakest teams in some areas. So, you need to get Kansas City probably a new stadium. I was going to that stadium as an 8th grader, and you know how damn old I am. So, they've got to do and be proactive, because you see what's happening in baseball with Tampa. You see what's happening in Oakland. Like, your bottom teams, facilities-wise, drag down the rest of the league. And if you have teams that aren't competitive because of these variables, you're devaluing the other owners' ability to make a buck or sell their team.
It reminds me a little bit of the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. Oakland was not willing to build them a new stadium. Guess what? Vegas was. And so that's what happened. Mark Davis put up some of his own money, but he's historically one of the most cash poor owners in the league. And so is Clark Hunt. Clark Hunt is not one of those, like, Denver Broncos type owners, the Walmart money. They don't have the Walmart money. They don't have a huge war chest or a lot of liquidated assets to make sure that they can pay for a brand new stadium themselves, $2 billion stadium. Same thing with Dean Spanos and the Chargers. They couldn't build themselves a stadium, so they're renting their SoFi out with the Rams. So it's like you have a bunch of factors going against Kansas City keeping their team, but you also have so many nuanced factors of moving them to a city like San Antonio. The Alamodome's not going to stand up. They're going to need a new stadium. Will the fan base accept them and want them here because of the Cowboys? This is Cowboys country, as we all know, and we're going to get into that in this 1 second. There's just so many different, especially in the Spurs are now looking to build a new stadium downtown. Rumors has it. And the Missions are looking for a new stadium downtown. Like there's only so much land to go around here at a certain point too. So I mean,
San Antonio has been down this road 1,000 times before. They were faced with this situation in the late 90s with the Spurs. Peter Holt, I was in the meeting that he said this. If we don't get a new stadium on the referendum by whatever the date was, we're going to move. We got 7
You're
cities.
Acting like Jerry Jones
here
on
they
this.
are. Sorry, I don't want to be doing that. We got 7 cities that want us: Baltimore, Anaheim, New Orleans. They went through the whole litany of things. And so it really was up to the voting fan base, which is, if you don't want to subsidize this team to build them a new arena, which they did, then they're going to leave. So you may not want to do this, and that's fine. Go vote and vote against doing this. But if you vote against this, it's guaranteed they're going to leave, because they're going to get it from somewhere. And if you don't want it to be you, rest assured they're going to get it from somebody else.
And with that being said, a brand new stadium and a brand new team in Texas is never going to they're always going to have hurdles. And one of the biggest ones is going to be an 80-some-odd-year-old man in Dallas. Jerry Jones has historically been against teams coming to Texas because he loves the monopoly that they have.
Sure.
In Texas, especially in Dallas, but they used to have training camp down here in San Antonio.
Yep.
The Houston,
Austin,
he's done a good job when the Houston Texans weren't there.
Brand building, just like the Spurs do when they go to Austin. This is what you do. You want to, capture the territory.
So do you think that is one of the biggest hurdles? Would you say that Jerry Jones is one of the biggest hurdles to San Antonio getting an NFL team?
No, because I think it's a misnomer too. I think it's easy to blame Jerry, the fact that we don't have NFL football here, but it's super complicated. I mean, you need money. You need people with foresight to say, we're going to build a stadium because this is what we're going to do. And if you build it, somebody would come. If you basically put the whole bill down and said, we're going to make SoFi Junior Stadium, we feel like this is important for our community, I guarantee you would get somebody to come here. But it's also harder now too, because you almost have to combine the markets, because these owners aren't going to move a Jacksonville and move them to San Antonio for a like television market. They're going to do it only if it enhances the overall brand of the league, based on, like, if you can combine a 30-something market in San Antonio and a now top 30 market or top 40 market like Austin, combine the two, now you're talking about a pretty big group of people that would, I mean, you can make the argument, you combine forces, it would be hard for other owners to not be enticed by having Kansas City move a team to San Antonio. But do you see any of that going on?
Well, yeah, and you would end up putting that new stadium near like New Braunfels, and you would end up putting it like right in the middle of the two markets. Now you're capturing two huge markets and basically combining them into two cities that equal I believe it equals the population of Houston or the Dallas area, something like that. My numbers could be off, but you have those two huge cities. Austin's the capital city of Texas, and San Antonio is the 7th most populated city in the U.S. You have those two combined now, and then it would be a whole new market almost. And so I see your point, and that would raise the value of not only the franchise, but it would raise the value of all the other franchises here. So if you're asking me, I think Jerry Jones is a hurdle, but if you explained this is how much money it's going to put in your pocket, he would get over it. I don't know if Kansas City is ever going to get over losing their football team if they ever.
No, I mean, this is the kind of thing that you hate to see. It's like when the Sonics left Seattle. Obviously it's different because it's the NBA compared to the NFL, but it was major news when the Colts left Baltimore and went to Indianapolis in the middle of the night. And I mean, you're ripping the fabric and the history out of these towns, and in a lot of cases the identity of some of these towns. And you saw what the state of New Orleans did when there was the rumors of the Saints coming to San Antonio, and that was starting to feel real. Well, the NFL went in, talked to some politicians, and now both the Saints and the basketball team there get subsidized by taxpayer money in the state of Louisiana to keep them there. So those teams are being financed by the public in order to keep them there. But I'm sure the people of Louisiana feel like having both of those teams there greatly enhances their invisibility around the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's all obviously very early in the process, and the Chiefs have to figure out what the hell they're doing in the first place. But it's just it's interesting that the news stations in Kansas City, KMBC9 is a station that my in-laws watch. I mean, my in-laws live in Kansas City. They watch the news every single night. They flip around to different channels, except for one of them, who I won't say. But they would be devastated with this loss of the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are the entire fabric of that community in some different ways. And so I think it's interesting that you have the stations there talking to San Antonio Mayor Henry Cisneros, and you have them talking to different legislators, and legislators in Kansas City are now talking about, oh, we're really scared about Texas. I just think that's where there's smoke, there's fire, Well,
there probably is, but there's also there are machines behind these things, right? I mean, they can start name dropping, and they can start saying that, well, we got to worry about Texas. Maybe next week it's San Jose or, some other place, Montreal.
Right.
It's really hard to know what's behind the inertia on some of this, but I think I speak for you too. I mean, the hope would be there's some sort of resolution, because you don't want to see the Kansas City Chiefs, especially what they've become the last half decade, to go be playing in Timbuktu.
I really just don't want Travis Kelce anywhere near a city my wife's in. So
the real truth comes out.
Bob, any questions?
Oh, by the time a stadium gets built here, he would probably be retired. So I think you're going to be safe.
A couple of comments have come in. Robert Kessler says, we are not a football city. Look at the stats of attendance for the Brahmas and now the Gunslinger franchises. We have not done enough to support the many football clubs that have tried. Then David Garcia, kind of on the same thing, said, at this moment, please fill up the dome for the next UFL Brahmas home game, which is on May 19th. And I'm telling you, I love watching the Brahmas right now.
I do too. And they're good. But and
there's also a difference between the XFL, 100%. UFL, and the NFL. The NFL is a machine.
There's the NFL, and then there literally is everything else. That's the way it is. The NFL is here, and then I don't care. You name the sport, you name the league, minor baseball, whatever. There's the NFL, and then there's everything else.
And you correct me if I'm wrong here. I've only lived in San Antonio for a little more than 2 years. But what I've learned is that they will adopt and love whatever team is here. The Brahmas are 2 years old. They have a decent following. They were second in attendance last year in the UFL. I mean, the UFL is this brand new startup league. And so it seems to me, you see the way that they've adopted Wemby and the way that they love the Spurs and the way they filled up the arena this year just to see them lose 60 games this year. I mean, I think that San Antonio is one of those communities that if you put an NFL team here, even if it's a startup or if it's the Chiefs, they're going to love them and they're going to fill up the arena anyway.
I think they would. I always go back to, this would be my reasoning on this, is like, you could be a Cowboy fan, but still pay for season tickets for whatever team is here. I think what would be difficult is if it's an NFC team you're talking about, and then you're having to preempt those Cowboy games. That would have been a problem with the Saints coming here, because there's no way the Saints on TV would have done what the Cowboys did.
That makes sense.
So there was a lot of moving parts, and the NFL saw that from a business standpoint too. And let's not forget, you put this to a vote, Jerry Jones has got one vote. If Jerry Jones was running the league like maybe he was 10 years ago, then Roger Goodell wouldn't be the commissioner. But he is. So Jerry has one vote. If this was beneficial for the league too, and somebody had the foresight to say, man, this market is ripe to have a pro football team, and it would support football because it is Texas. I don't know. You could make it work. It's just a matter of, who's going to be the muscle behind it. And you got to get a lot of these entities moving in the same direction.
I'll tell you this, if the team is good, the stadium's going to be full. That's all I can say. Like, you see that with UTSA too. The better the team is, the more people are there. So
the one thing I don't understand is why doesn't the city or the team itself, the Brahmas, try harder to get fans in the seats. It doesn't seem like they even try.
I think
And if you want to make a good case for like being an NFL team, fill that thing up. I mean, I don't care if you have to paper it over, giveaway tickets, fill it up.
I think they do, but the UFL is so new that they're still trying to get proof of concept. So once they prove that they aren't going away, then I think that they'll move practices down here to San Antonio, and they'll have more community events, and they'll have more of that stuff. I think right now they're just being like, can we survive or not? But that's just my read of it.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about what was going on in the background and all that, because it just seems like there's a lot of outside forces pulling against this league. Maybe everybody's kind of worn out, especially here with all of the leagues that we've had. And, everybody invested in the AAF, and then, 3/4 of the way through the season, they pulled the plug on it. I mean, I think, rightfully so. There are a lot of people here with some battle scars when it comes to this, and I count myself among them. However, I've never seen a league that was just starting out have this much outside forces where it seems like there are, you don't have anybody on ESPN talking about the league. You've got all these people talking about how bad ratings are. I mean, they were talking about how good the ratings were the other day. Still, if 1 million people watched the Texans on a Sunday afternoon, that's still 1 million people.
Yes.
I mean, for a fledgling league, the quality of football is pretty good. I don't know. I don't really know how to read this, Matthew, to be honest with you, but it just seems like nobody in a high place is pulling for this league to succeed. And I don't know why that is.
Bob, one thing real quick.
Another comment from John Ortega III. They need to make it a San Antonio Austin team to have a better chance of getting a team. And I think
Agree
you guys
completely.
mentioned that earlier.
Agree completely.
Won't get any debate from me.
Yep. Let's talk real quick before we get out of here. Try and wrap this up in 3 or 4 minutes here. Now that Don's told me I do this, he's like broken the glass for me. So every time I do it, I realize that I'm doing it now. You ever have those habits where someone points
like
at
me pounding the table after I
like,
just got done talking about the Cowboys doing it at their press?
Well, it's like someone points it out to you, and then you realize, like, oh, I do that all the time. Like, I adjust my mic all the time, and now I'm like, every time I touch the mic, I'm like, oh, I got to stop. But anyway, see, Luis slapped my hand away.
Well, the whole thing with the paper, that's like Anchorman, right? Isn't that when you're on the desk, you're supposed to do that with the
Scotch.
Anchorman documentary. That's what it was.
Anchorman is one of my favorite. Is probably like a top 3 movie of all time. It's so
because
good.
It's real.
That's exactly how it happens.
Yeah.
Candace.
Anyway, so Wemby officially won Rookie of the Year. He is the 9th player to win it unanimously, or 7th player, to win it unanimously. He went on NBA on TNT after the announcement. He had a lot of different things to say. One of the bites I know you used on Monday night was he sees this as a win. He thinks that the awards aspect of winning is important because it shows the process that you're going through. However, he realizes he has so much further to go, and that if this is the floor, then it's a pretty okay floor.
Yeah. And they're going to have a little press conference on Saturday too. Wow. 5 days after the fact. That's nice to include the local guys in on this. Yes. I mean, his humility is admirable, right? He's, everything that you said about, the complete sweep with the first place votes is unbelievable. And then what I was really floored by was the Defensive Player of the Year voting, because, a lot of these stats that we look at to measure, what a guy does on the defensive stat side, they factor in wins. So again, of course, he gets clobbered on that stuff. But having said that, the distance between Victor and the number 3 guy in the voting tells you that there are more people that are at least seeing what it is that he does well and voting accordingly. I mean, I couldn't believe that, with all those dogs that they had on there, real guys that really play hard and really are good at defense, that he's 2nd in the league in that regard, and by a wide margin when it comes to people that vote for this.
Yeah, and then you see where he was in the Defensive Player of the Year voting as well. He was 2nd. And it was a pretty wide margin from him to Rudy Gobert to him, but the margin from him to Bam Adebayo or Anthony Davis was even bigger of a chasm. Like, I feel like that voting was actually a lot closer than I expected it to be. He got like 20 or 17 first place votes in Defensive Player of the Year, but I thought it was interesting. every single time he talks, I'm like, God, he's just a mature 20-year-old. Like, how is he 20 years old? He speaks like he's 30. He really does. Like, he speaks like he's a 10-year vet every time I listen to him.
Yeah, and I mean, that's got to endear him to everybody in the room too, because he certainly doesn't have to be that with the year that he put up.
Yeah, and he's just a different kind of animal. He really is an alien, because he goes to sleep at 9 o'clock, or he turns his phone off at 9 o'clock and gets his 8, 9, 10 hours, and then he wakes up. He does all of his workouts. He is in the community. He's doing all these things for Nike and different commercials, but he's still working on his craft. He's still working on basketball, and it's like, if that's who he really is, if that's who he continues to be for the next 15 years, San Antonio and the Spurs have gotten just somebody that's going to change the fabric of their entire city.
They got to work on the wins next year, because
Absolutely.
that's where this needs to go.
If the Spurs lose 60 games next year, I think that there's going to be heads rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it the way they played the last 20 ball games.
I don't either. I mean, the
15
West,
ball games,
the
whatever
bad
it was.
thing is that the West is just so good. You have players like
So young and good.
Yeah, you have players like Nikola Jokić won the MVP, and I think that we're probably 3-4 years away from Wemby winning an MVP. He will win one, at least one, in his lifetime. But the West is just so good. Like, I think it was 4 games separated the 4th seed from the 10th seed. It was just unbelievably ridiculous.
The scary part is, though, too, is that, you know, the Spurs window, let's say it's starting to open. Oklahoma City's already there, and they're young, and they got draft picks. Minnesota, you know, who knows what they're going to end up doing, because there was already talk about blowing this team up. But, you know, again, it's what to me doesn't make any sense about the NBA. Kind of like firing your coach in Milwaukee mid-season with a 32-13 record, whatever it was, and then come on.
Yeah,
I mean, so I don't know
what
what's
do you
going
mean?
on with
You
some
didn't
of
want
these
Doc
teams.
Rivers there?
Huh? I like Doc Rivers. I like him just fine. I loved him when he was here. But again, it's almost an untenable situation that you're walking into when they just fired the coach that had a 32-17 record or whatever it was. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
NBA's changed, man.
All right. Well, I've already gone over on our time, so let's get out of here. Bob, anything else?
No, we're good.
All right. Well, hopefully the Chiefs don't treat, or Clark Hunt doesn't treat the Chiefs like Art Modell treated your Browns back in the day. So not even allowed to say his name. Sorry. All right. Well, that's all we got for you on the Sneakers Cleats podcast today. Join us on Monday for our 100th episode. We got a cool new logo that's in the works. I'm gonna try and book some guests. I'm gonna try and bring back some old clips that we have. We'll do a whole little 100th episode little celebration. So.
Oh, old clips, and this thing's only 100 years old, man. What? Okay, your show.
100.
I'm just here to help you.
Remember
space.
episode 2?
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm gonna bring back is when Chuck did the poetry slam about the Churchill Chargers. It's my favorite clip of all time.
We'll have to do that again, maybe when high school football.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we will. I mean, I can't wait to get into those episodes again anyway. But anyway, join us on Monday, 1 o'clock, our 100th episode. That'll be a lot of fun. Until then, make sure you rate, review, subscribe, download, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We'll be right back here on Monday. Until then, everyone have a good weekend.